This event is sponsored by the Henrico County Democratic Committee. The use of the University of Richmond and University of Richmond School of Law facilities for this event does not constitute an endorsement by the university. The views expressed during this event are those of the speaker and not the university. The University of Richmond and University of Richmond Law School do not endorse or oppose candidates for public office. Okay, all right. The HCDC bylaws state that it is our policy to nominate all candidates of the party in the county and to do all within its power to aid the victory of Democratic nominees in all elections. The committee will not discriminate on the basis of sex, race, age, color, creed, national origin, religion, economic status, sexual orientation, ethnic identity, or disability. It is also our duty to make sure that qualified candidates gain ballot access. As the chairwoman of this organization, it is my hope that we did these things well and without favor or bias. The way I describe our role in the primaries to people is that we help you get on the ballot, and then we'll see you again on June 12th to work hard for the nominee given to us by the voters. After June 12th, I feel confident that both of these women will find ways to support each other and bring together a coalition of supporters who will help us put the 12th district in the win column for the Democrats. The Henrico County Democratic Committee needs both of you to commit to finding ways to use your talents and intellect long into the future, because we both represent what is best in our party. Each of these women has worked harder than most of us can imagine. They have put themselves in the unenviable position of public scrutiny. They have asked strangers for help, money, time, and votes. Every challenge from ballot access to fundraising deadlines to sleepless nights and missed vacations is reason enough to celebrate them coming this far. Please give Vita Lothe and Delegate Deborah Rodman a big round of applause. Professor Mary Kelly Tate serves as director of the School of Law's Institute for Actual Innocence, which works to identify and exonerate wrongfully convicted individuals in Virginia by pursuing writs of actual innocence and related post-conviction release, and also teaches a wrongful conviction seminar. Her scholarship focuses on post-conviction issues, and she has been invited to speak at national symposiums on innocence commissions and the problem of wrongful convictions. Students working with Professor Tate through the Institute for Actual Innocence receive a rich academic and clinical education experience that involves case review and reinvestigation, as well as partnership with legal, scientific, and policy leaders in the field. Professor Tate and her students also work in the area of public policy reform. Professor Tate has served as an assistant public defender in the Richmond Public Defender's Office and represented individuals in post-conviction, capital, and criminal litigation as an attorney in private practice. Please give a warm welcome to Professor Mary Tate.
Closing arguments.
So I will use
Statements.
Closing statements. There just won't be any clapping. That's the top line information there. And so I know that everyone here will respect that rule of engagement. And then secondly, another rule of engagement will be that there will be no sign waving. And there will be the urge to do that, but we're not going to indulge that urge. And that's period. I've been told for the powers that be that there shall be no
Bottom one. Yeah.
It's on.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Deborah Rodman, and I represent the 73rd District in Henrico in the House of Delegates, and I am running to be your senator. I'm an educator, I'm a mom, and I serve as a country conditions expert for women and children and LGBT individuals fleeing violence in U.S. federal immigration court. My life's work has been about making the American dream accessible for women, for students, for the most vulnerable communities in the world. And as you all know, that takes grit and resolve and the hard work to face massive challenges, but yet make small differences every day. And when I ran in 2017, I believed we could do better as a country, in the state of Virginia, and in Henrico. And we did it in 2017. We did it in 2018, and we need to do it in 2019. You know, I believe the American dream is not about paying thousands of dollars a month to get access to quality health care. I do not believe the American dream is having a politician get between a woman and her decisions about her own body. And we sure as heck know the American dream is about being afraid to send your children to school, to have them play in a playground, to go to work. We need to make sure that we feel safe in our communities. In 2017, when I got off the campaign trail, Medicaid expansion is what we were talking about, and we did it and we passed it. But my constituents still feel vulnerable about their health care. I still feel vulnerable about my health care. I've spent almost 20 years with a chronic medical condition. And so when I replaced a position on the health care committee, I was way intimidated. But as soon as those bills started coming across the table, I knew what we had done was replaced a physician with a patient. And I have been one of the strongest advocates for health care on that health care committee. We need to do this. We need to work together to make sure that we get the majority, because if we get the majority, and we can this year, we will make a difference in the lives of everyday Virginians, true differences. I am a relentless campaigner. I am a relentless, hard-working person for my constituents in the 73rd District, and I look forward to proving that in the 12th State District. Thank you.
I want to thank all of you. It's the bottom. It's the bottom.
Yeah. Just push it.
It's a little button underneath. Yes.
There you go, it's on.
I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. This is a very, very exciting race here in Western Henrico and Hanover County. Thank you so much, Lizzie, and the rest of the committee for organizing this. It's a great time for Henrico County and a great time to see us turn blue. When I first started this campaign about a year and a half ago, it was a campaign. Now, as I look back, I can see that we have developed a real community here in Henrico County. We are bringing together diverse elements of people from all across the county, and we are forming a coalition that will not only help us win elections this year, but in 5 years, and in 10 years, and down the road. You know, every organization out there, every government has to think long term. And the way we win elections in Henrico County and in the Commonwealth of Virginia is by building coalitions. I have told you the story a million times that one of my meet and greets, we had 20 different languages. And that is really exciting to me. And that is the new Henrico County that's going to take us forward. As you all can probably guess, I am from an immigrant family. My parents moved here in the early 1960s, and like all immigrants, they came here for the immigrant dream. My dad spent 30 years as a doctor in rural West Virginia, serving the people of West Virginia. After we got our green card, my mom said, "Can we leave now?" And my dad said, "No, this is where I was meant to serve." And that is the idea of service that I was raised with. I graduated from Cornell Law School 25 years ago. This moot courtroom is giving me some nightmares. And I got out of school and I went to Philadelphia. And I started working as a civil rights lawyer and a union-side labor lawyer and an immigration lawyer. And I can tell you that things were bad then. We didn't do a great job settling our cases. We lost a lot. We had a really good case that we settled for $7,000. An African-American woman was being harassed. But I can tell you today, we would lose that case because things are going backward. I've been fighting for my clients one by one for 25 years, and now I'm ready to do it on a larger scale. I want to take my expertise as a lawyer, 2.5 decades of it, and take it to the General Assembly. We all agree on what we need to do. All of us have the same ideas in this room. But it's going to take skill, it's going to take negotiation, and it's going to take careful drafting of laws, and it's going to take us learning how to be advocates for what we're pushing for. We need to get in front of hostile audiences, and we need to tell them why reproductive choice is vital. We need to get out there and advocate for gun laws. And we need to get out there so people understand why it's important. So I'm ready to take my skill set and get out there, and I'm ready to fight. Thank you so much.
These are questions that have been submitted online in person here, so I'm going to start with the first question. It will go to Nina because he started. Deborah started. Here's the first question. What do you feel is the single biggest issue facing the Commonwealth of Virginia, and how do you plan on addressing it?
So I've been saying for the last couple of months that our biggest issue is gun violence. And let me explain that. Right now what's happening is we're living in kind of a pressure cooker. We have hate crimes, we have rising income inequality, and we have a lot of tension in our society. So you take that pressure cooker, and then you throw in lethal weapons. And that's a big mistake. We are seeing people who are scared every day of their lives, wondering what's going to happen. I was at a meet and greet a couple of weeks ago, and a high school student said to me, "Make it so I don't have to be scared every day when I go to school." And that hit me like a ton of bricks, and it should all of us like a ton of bricks. So when you ask me what I'll specifically do about gun safety, it's number one, we have to introduce bills. Every delegate and every senator has to sponsor or co-sponsor gun safety bills. We cannot be afraid of the topic. It is a purple topic. 85% of people agree that we need common sense gun legislation. One of my first priorities is to make sure people have to report stolen guns, because those guns are used against police officers. Second priority is to raise the liability for parents who leave their guns sitting around. Right now, Virginia is very lax about that, and we don't have any pull on parents to make sure that they are safe with their guns. Third thing is we need those red flag laws. A lot of people in Virginia think we can't do it. 15 states have passed good red flag laws. Most of them are bluer than us, but the exception is Florida. Florida took action and they passed very strong laws on gun safety. So we can do it here, but we cannot be afraid of the topic. We cannot be afraid to advocate and argue and explain in front of hostile audiences. 20 years ago, did any of us think that we would pass gay marriage? I didn't. We can't give up. We have to push through.
Well, we definitely have some serious priorities, but I will say that we are still really facing reproductive rights issues. Roe versus Wade, I think we all feel that pressure coming from the top with the Trump Supreme Court. And Roe versus Wade is really one of the most important issues of our time. I was born in 1972, where we were still fighting to make sure that our rights and our decisions and privacy were respected. And here we are, 46 years old, and we're back where we are in terms of fighting on Roe versus Wade. We know from this past session that this is what Republicans and that we'll be talking about, which we'll be fighting for. And a lot of what will be discussed in this campaign is going to be about making sure that our rights are protected on Roe versus Wade. And so, as you know, for the past 2 years, I've put forward a bill to end types of repressive and unnecessary barriers for our women to access reproductive care, and I will continue that pursuit this next year and the year after. Thank you.
Now that we've passed Medicaid expansion, what is the next big step we can take to improve health care?
So we have Medicaid expansion. We have over 280,000 people who have signed up for Medicaid. But we still have so much to do in terms of access to health care. You know, I was knocking doors the other day, and I had several people at the doors talk about the impact of health care on their lives. It is still, I'm sure you will agree, one of the #1 issues at the door. And I had a woman tell me that her and her husband, a veteran, even though he's passed away, they lost all their savings because of the costs to health care. I myself, for many years, spent almost a quarter of my income on my premiums, on the co-insurances. And so moving forward, we're talking about fighting pharmaceutical drug prices. We can do that at the state level. There are other states that have negotiated pharmaceutical drug prices. We still have to work on making sure, when we're in the majority, that the insurance plans are coming to the table. As many of you know, I worked with a transgender health bill this past 2 years. It did not get passed. But what we did is put the pressure on, and we can do that in the majority, is to bring the health care plans forward and making sure that we're protecting our protected benefits under the ACA. And that's one of the #1 issues we're going to be seeing with our opponent in this coming year, is talking about making sure that those protections from the ACA stay in the state level. And there's going to be a push to make us move out of the market, and we need to make sure that pre-existing conditions are covered and we're not selling healthcare plans that are affordable, but that truly are covering our benefits. Thank you.
So this is an extremely important topic, and it's actually a scary topic right now, because Senator Donovan just put out a pretty comprehensive plan about what she would like to see in healthcare. Buried in that is the idea that there's no longer protection for pre-existing conditions. But around that is a lot of words that sound really good, and that she's able to sell to people. So we have to understand the healthcare laws in this state, inside and out, in order to argue against a physician who sounds awfully good when she's up there talking. So we need to make sure that those protections stay in Virginia law, especially with pre-existing conditions. #2, medical marijuana. Right now we have 5 dispensaries that are not operational yet in Virginia. Almost all the medical evidence shows us that medical marijuana is one of the next big breakthroughs in a number of chronic conditions that don't have treatments otherwise. We need to make sure that the laws that Senator Donovan and the rest of the legislation passed are not just for namesake, and that people actually have access to the medical marijuana that they need. #3, there are things that we can do to increase competition and lower prices in the state of Virginia. Right now we have a process called Certificate of Public Need, and that process restricts the number of providers who can provide services in Virginia. If we loosen those restrictions a little bit, we can have more radiology clinics, we can have more outpatient surgery clinics, and we might be able to bring down prices. It's not big and exciting, but there are things that we can do at the state level.
What is an out-of-the-box idea that you have that you would like the General Assembly to pursue? Out of the box. Unusual thing.
for Virginia. So I think that our state legislature needs to look very closely at this and to figure out whether we need to give our localities more ability to control what's going on in their own communities. The problem with having a part-time legislature is sometimes we don't hit these big issues because we just don't have time. But we need to look at this because this could change the dynamic in Virginia. We always talk about the Virginia way. The Virginia way is slow and steady, but that doesn't always work. And this might be something that would turn that relationship upside down and help us make some progress on some important issues.
For me, one of the biggest issues that I've struggled with in the past couple of years working in the General Assembly is on the Education Committee. And we have family life education. And that is really not truly what we would consider sex education or education that is going to enable our students and our children to have access and to true education, to the things that they need. And so one of the bills that I put forward in the past 2 years is about that have been shut down over and over again, and we need to make sure that family life education is more expansive. And I know it's not out of the box, but it is what we need in the state of Virginia. So mental health education, put forward a bill, House rate for K through 12, age-appropriate mental health education to be incorporated into family life education, shut down. Making sure that our children have access to understanding about their bodies, even if they're developmentally disabled or they have an IEP. And I put forward that bill in a bipartisan way last year, and sure enough, it was shut down. For me, as an educator, as an anthropologist, somebody who teaches our students coming out of Virginia, 85% of my students come out of Virginia schools with very little education about their bodies, about their boundaries, about sexual abuse. And in fact, that was also another bill I put forward to incorporate sexual abuse education, again, shut down. So I think we need to reassess what family life education really means and make sure that it's accessible to all our students.
Thank you. Thank you. Gun violence is a matter of great urgency. How can we make this less about politics and more about safety?
I really like how you said that. It's about politics and more about safety. You know, I take this really personally, gun violence. A good friend of mine committed suicide in college. He should have never had access to a gun. And let me tell you, we have worked so hard in the past 2 years to bring really good bills for gun violence prevention, for gun safety. I mean, really simple stuff. We're talking about a tax rate on storing your guns in a safe. But they die in the Guns and Militia Subcommittee. So it's not that we haven't been working really hard to move forward, but we haven't been able to make that happen. And I will tell you, I was just with the governor and delegates and senators yesterday talking about our special session that we're going to have coming up. And this is such an incredible opportunity to make a huge difference in the lives of Virginians. And I have hope. Because let me tell you, we are going to hold everybody accountable to their votes in that special session. But doesn't matter who wins this primary, doesn't matter what happens. What matters is that we get it done. And I really believe that this is the year we can get this done. Because it is time, and we should no longer be afraid in our own communities. And that's what we'll be doing from here on forward for that special session. Thank you.
So I've been a member and attending Moms Demand Action for a couple of years now, and I've been down at the General Assembly advocating for common sense gun laws for a couple of years. And we do have a lot of good gun laws, gun safety laws that we've proposed that have died in the subcommittee, and it is discouraging. So what we have to do And it's a tough one, but we need to be advocates out there for what we believe in, and we need to keep pushing it. We need to introduce these bills. As I said, every delegate and every senator needs to have co-sponsored or sponsored a gun bill, because that signals to everybody that we're really serious. And it needs to be our number one priority going forward, because I believe it's the number one priority for the people of this county.
Thank you. When the primary is over, will you pledge to help canvass and make phone calls for the candidate who wins?
All right, first of all, give me a week off. For the past few years, my family and I have knocked thousands and thousands and thousands of doors. These issues go way beyond me. These issues go way beyond any one person. I will be out there. My son will be out there. When my daughter's home for the summer, she'll be out there. We are working for the Democratic Party. We are working for a better Democratic Party, and I won't give up. I don't care who the nominee is. I will be there fighting. So I take that pledge, not a minute of hesitation, and we're going to do this. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. I will be working hard. We're all going to unite and get this done together.
Economical answers from candidates. Wow, impressive. What are you doing to promote racial justice in Virginia? What steps can the General Assembly take?
You know, as an anthropologist, you know, we work hard to listen to the lived experiences of people to inform our theory. And that is the perspective and the skills that I brought to the legislature. Because it is through the lived experiences, racial disparities, gender disparities, able-bodyism, how that impacts our lives. And for so long, the legislature, as we know, really came from one very particular perspective. And oftentimes the rules that were made, the laws that were made, dominated and gave advantages to one group. We know what our history is in Virginia. Here we are at the University of Virginia. Just, you know, just to say that, I mean, you can almost, you know, feel the history here that in many ways is very dark and very sad. And that's why when we had this great election in 2017, when we had the first transgender woman, the first Latino woman, me speaking in Spanish with Elizabeth Guzman on the floor of the House, that we really saw a shift in that paradigm. And let me tell you, I worked very hard with the Black Caucus this past 2 sessions on gun violence issues, listening when we talked. I remembered I was in a meeting and we were talking about gun violence, and somebody was talking about the massacres and the school shootings, and my colleague stepped up and said, what about my community? What about the daily shootings? What about daily gun violence? And that's why you listen, you are patient, and you listen to the lived experiences so that we can make sure that we move forward on healing and making true legislation that is going to make up for our hard racial disparities in the history of Virginia.
So I have spent my life working for racial justice. As a civil rights attorney, as an immigration attorney, these issues are close to me. And when I get to the General Assembly, it's going to be a priority. Our greatest issue right now in terms of racial disparity, in my opinion, is criminal justice reform. And what we're doing in the Commonwealth of Virginia is we're incarcerating an entire generation of young African American men. Whether it's happening on purpose, or whether it's the result of antiquated laws that throw people in jail for no reason, often. That's what's happening. We need serious, serious reform of our criminal justice system. We need to raise the minimum felony threshold to at least get to the national average, which is around $1,000. We need to have professional public defenders helping indigent clients. And we need to do a thorough study of our criminal justice system here in Virginia. don't really have to go there. That's not right. We're going everywhere. We are going everywhere because everyone in this district deserves to be represented. We are building a big tent campaign with all sorts of different people, and that's what we need to do, not only politically, it's a smart move for the Democratic Party, because we need to be stronger, and our strength is going to come from our diversity. So thank you.
Thank you. What does the General Assembly need to do to address climate change?
So they need to do something because the federal government has completely dropped the ball. I am in favor of a market-based solution or approach to climate change. And what this means is that when you have power companies using fossil fuels, they pay a price. It's not a tax. I think it's more akin to a toll or a user fee. It's an idea that started in the 1990s, and it's an idea that worked. Because we can have idealistic visions of how we're going to reduce carbon emissions, but until it hits people's wallet, they're not going to react. There's a consortium of 10 states, it's called the RGGI, that uses a market-based approach, and they have had a lot of success. They're mostly states that are bluer than ours, but hopefully they can expand, and we can create incentives. Because that's what you need to do with the law, is you need to shape behavior, and you need to bring about outcomes with specific laws. I would like to wave a magic wand and bring down carbon emissions, but I don't have that magic wand. And we're going to have to use a market, money-based approach if we want to get it done.
I was asked to be on the agriculture committee when I was first elected. And I think they had no idea what they were getting because I have a master's degree in marine affairs and policy from the Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Science. So little did they know what they get. They thought they were getting a suburban mom when they put me on the ag committee. But the reason I did this is because I actually went into my PhD program to do tropical conservation and development. And what was one of the first things I signed on to when I decided to run for office was not to take Dominion Energy money. What was one of the first things that I did when I was elected was joined a caucus not to take corporate money. And let me tell you, I was the one who whipped the freshman vote to vote against the Dominion Energy Bill, one of the most important bills that are still having real impact on our day-to-day lives in terms of how much we spend, how much we're charged by Dominion, and the future of our energy resources in Virginia. Every freshman voted against that Dominion bill that first round, and we pushed back on the pricing, we pushed back on double dipping, and we pushed back to make sure that they expanded their vision of renewable energy. We still have a long way to go because climate change is our #1 issue in our nation and in our country. And let me tell you, today, the freshman class have now all not taking Dominion money. On this agriculture committee, we are making the decisions about flooding, climate change, consumer products, everything that has to do with the environment and climate change. And I continue my commitment and my advocacy in the field of the environment. Thank you.
Okay, why do you think you are more capable than your opponent of beating Senator Dems?
First of all, I think I've got a really good opponent here, so I'm going to try to keep this positive. I talked about the community that we were building through the campaign, and I will say that I will be the first Indian American in the Virginia General Assembly. People are really excited about this, and not just people in the Indian American community, but anyone who's a recent immigrant is really excited to see a face that looks like theirs. And it makes me really happy to represent and to be there and to help people who have not been here very long feel like they're a part of this community. If you look around in Henrico County, it looks an awful lot like Northern Virginia 2018, the number of Asian Americans quadrupled. These folks are mostly Democrats, but not all. And we can bring them into our coalition and we can build a strong and vibrant Democratic Party. We have tried to build a really positive campaign that includes everybody, that makes everybody feel like they're part of the Commonwealth and that they're part of this country. And from an immigrant perspective, that is really important. I think it's the future of the Democratic Party, and I think it's the future of Henrico County. We have gotten some terrific national endorsements. We now have 3 national endorsements. This race is getting a lot of attention. Democracy for America, which is one of the largest progressive groups in the country, has endorsed our campaign, and they are ready to see us through to the end. We have got a terrific grassroots game going, and we have people who are genuinely excited about this race.
This is one of the top 3 seats to flip the Senate this year. And it was a difficult decision to make this choice to go from the House to the Senate. But let me tell you, this is an off year election. We don't have a governor at the top. We don't have a presidential race at the top. The state Senate seat is the top of the seat. And when I had my Encounter RVA event with Senator Duncan last November, it was really one of the first times that I realized I could take her. Because it really, no matter, even though you're elected I was elected in 2017, so many of us who were working on that election, we worked so hard together, we learned how to organize, we learned how to do what it takes to win an impossible race, and I won an impossible race. And when I had that event, I saw how Senator Duncan, again, presents her bills in ways that make them look like shiny little gifts, and I could undermine that message. I know that I can build a coalition. I have built a coalition in 2017 because this is going to be a really difficult race. We can work together. I have the experience. I have the know-how. And most of all, we did it in 2017. I know we could do it in 2019. And that organizational skill, that ability to work together, which I know we will do after this primary, that we will knock doors just like we did before, continue to reach out to all different communities. It's what I did in 2017. It's why I ran, and that's why I'm with you today, because we need to make sure that we have the strongest organization to be and flip the Senate this year. Thank you.
Virginia has relatively lax campaign finance laws. What is your vision for future campaign finance legislation?
I already mentioned it before, when I ran for office in 2017, this was a big part of my campaign. I signed on to the People's Caucus when I first was elected, one of only 4 people to take a stand against corporate contributions. I refused Dominion money, I refused public service corporation money, and we have to realize that finance reform is not just about finance reform, it's about election reform in general. And so my work is about making sure that we are working hard to push back. That's why I helped bring the freshmen together in terms of pushing back. And let me tell you, in the party, it is not easy. I got a lot of pushback when I said I'm not going to take this money, I'm not going to do this, and I continue to do so. But I think as we move forward, we know how many candidates now have taken these pledges against taking this sort of money. And we will continue to do so. It takes a lot of work to make sure that you're bringing people together and you're making true advances in campaign finance reform. But it's campaign finance reform is about the bigger picture of access to elections in general. And that's why in the past few years I put forward bills to give more access to the ballot, because it's all connected together. And I hope as we move forward that we will continue, because we really need to make sure that we're having true access to the ballot, and that money is not getting in the way of what we do.
So our campaign is not taking money from Dominion or any public utility. We are And if that issue is important to you, I suggest that you go and you look at the campaign finance reports for any candidate that you are following and see where their money is coming from. We just put out a comprehensive policy on campaign finance reform, and you can find it on my website. A few highlights from that is that we're proposing a $5,000 cap on campaign donations, $5,000 for the primary and $5,000 for the general. Right now, Virginia has no limits on anything. Anyone can give anyone anything, and we are proposing that that ends. 5,000 is a high number. I'd like to see it lower, but we've got to start somewhere. We are also proposing that there be no direct corporate donations. This is something that's very popular with Democratic members of the United States Congress, and it's really important in terms of buying influence. And it's one of the reasons that, personally, in my campaign, we are not taking any corporate money. Recently, we rolled out our plan, and End Citizens United, the progressive group that is determined to overthrow Citizens United, recognized our policy as being game-changing in Virginia and of changing the status quo. And that's what we got to do. Because sometimes the Virginia way is just not working. There are some areas where we're just not making any progress. The environment is one of them. We're not doing much about it in Virginia. And it's because there are money interests that are controlling a lot of these bills. We're not making a lot of progress on guns. Again, money interest. We have taken a principled stand. No corporate money. And we would like to see other people follow that as well.
Thank you. In light of the rise in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and similar problems, what do you plan to do to support and intensify safeguards in this regard?
Well, this is a very important topic, and as I talk to people, you don't realize how scared communities of color really are right now in Virginia. First thing we can do, we've already talked about, and that is making our gun safety laws a lot stronger. As I said, we're taking a pressure cooker of racial issues, of income inequality, of all these issues that are going on that are creating a very tense society, and we're throwing guns into the mix. And that has people of color really scared. You know, I had a problem with my car the other day, and it failed inspection. I had a brown 17-year-old boy, and I was so scared to put him out there driving that car, wondering if he was going to get stopped by a cop. This is me, an educated person, scared of what would happen to my son. We've got some real problems that we need to work on in the Commonwealth, and the hate crimes are on the rise. Recently, Godwin High was covered with graffiti. Signs all around town were covered with graffiti. I joined with a progressive group, and we got out there and we scrubbed those signs clean. Because we cannot have that in our community. We need to be out there and we need to be doing these things that appear symbolic, but they are a statement. They are a statement that we're taking these things very, very seriously. We need to come together as a community, and that's what our campaign has been about. Strengthen our hate crimes laws. Bring in communities of color to be part of all of these conversations, and make the Commonwealth a more welcoming place.
So my grandparents came over from the old country, and I spent my life watching my grandparents suffer with anti-Semitism. My uncle was a Holocaust survivor, and to see my father spend his life, now that I'm older and I kind of put it together, pushing back on what people thought of him and the way he looked and the way he talked. And to see the rise of anti-Semitism in our country, in Virginia, and Henrico has been extremely painful. When I, was elected, I was asked, they said, who would like to talk about Holocaust Remembrance Day?
and many of you know this, I stood on the House floor and talked about the Holocaust. And I sit on the Virginia board of the Holocaust Museum. And you can see my speech on their website. But it was a turning point in my life. Little did I know what was coming in the past 2 years in terms of anti-Semitic rhetoric. And we know that anti-Semitism is intrinsically linked to racism and to sexism and to pushing back on the other. I have spent my life, I grew up in Miami, I've spent my life working on behalf of refugees and immigrants. And to see this move forward and anti-Semitism grow, and that's why Holocaust education and fighting against anti-Semitism has become a big part of who I am and my platform. It's not what I expected my life to be like today, but it is what we have to do, we continue to do. And so next year, I will be putting forward a Holocaust education bill if I'm still elected, because we need to make sure that that is mandatory in teaching in our schools. Thank you.
280,000 people may have signed up for Medicaid, but how many were actually approved, and how long does that approval take?
Say the question again?
280,000. 280,000 people may have signed up for Medicaid, but how many were actually approved, and how long does that approval take?
That's a question I don't know. I would have to, of course, work with my team, but that's not a question. I don't know how long it takes.
Thank you.
So I believe we have approximately 120,000, give or take a few, that are left to be made part of the system. I actually just made a phone call about this, and I was told 90 days. I was not able to figure out what exactly the issues are. I'm working on it. We are trying to figure out these issues. Obviously, the promise of Medicaid expansion has worked for some people, and it's not working for others. I'm sorry I don't have a more definite answer. All I can say is that we are trying to get to the bottom of it.
Thank you. I've been told that that was the last question.
I think because it was so brief, we could maybe do more.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will do. A fairly technical healthcare question, technical to me. How do you plan on fixing the balance billing problem in insurers who close their panels to MDs, rendering them out of network for patients, many of which have been cared for by the same MD for years?
All right, I do know this. Balance billing and surprise billing. I have lived this. This is when you go see a doctor in the emergency room and they're out of network, you don't know that, and then you get what's with surprise or balance billing later. And this is, as legislators, this is what we've been working on and speaking with the doctors in the past year before this session, and really impacts your life because, for example, my husband went to the ER and then there was an out-of-network doctor. We ended up getting a bill later because the doctor was out of network. It was thousands of dollars. And let me tell you, the next time my kid went to the ER, River ended up in the ER, there was a moment where they said, well, we're going to have to do this testing. And I actually, for a second, was like, oh my gosh, is the doctor out of network? And it has real-life impacts. So what we did this past session is we tried to move forward on a bill to get rid of surprise billing and to get rid of balance billing, but it just ended up turning into a study. So I hope that we move forward and we can, number one, make sure that doctors are being paid what they need to be paid, but that we're also protecting patients.
You guys are good at passing the time.
So I think we introduced a couple of pretty good bills that addressed this issue. I think that what we can do even further, and it's not necessarily a legislative function, is to lean on the insurance companies so that they are or to Kentucky, or to Maryland, or to Pennsylvania, to be read by somebody else, because the technology allows you to do that right now. And then you get a surprise bill saying you're out of network, and you get a bill from somebody in Maryland, and this actually happened to me. We need regulations around this. It's not benefiting anybody to have such a loose structure around these billing issues. So until we get a more comprehensive solution to our healthcare problems, which I hope is coming out of the federal government, we have got to watchdog the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies, and all of the people who are benefiting from our for-profit healthcare system. It's the only way that the system is going to work. We have introduced some good bills. We need to introduce some more good bills. Some of this needs to go through the Mark Herring's office, because it's really not a legislative function per se.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. We got through 11 questions, and thank you, audience, and others who submitted this, people who may be in the blogosphere submitted them online. Great questions, and now we have closing statements, not arguments.
Not arguments.
You're trying to be family, and I can bring up arguments. Gosh, I won't be invited back, but at any rate, I believe that you go first, and Deborah will follow.
So thank you again for coming out today. This has been a wonderful experience. I invite you all to learn more about my campaign at binalothe.com and to check me out on Facebook. As a campaign, we're a little bit different. We are very, very grassroots. We do things a little bit differently. We don't have a lot of consultants. We have a lot of smart people on our staff who are doing things on their own. We are out there. We're knocking doors, and we're engaging with people. And we're hitting the entire district. Whether it's politically smart or not, we're engaging with everybody. Second thing, please go to my website and look at my policy proposals. I'm not standing here saying that I have the answer to every question and to every issue, but I am saying that we're attacking the issues and we're putting out ideas. And the ideas are really specific. And we invite you to push back on that. And we invite you to debate with us about those issues. Because that's how we're going to get better. That's how my campaign is going to get better. And when I'm in the state senate, that's how I'm going to be a better representative. But please engage with us. If you're an undecided voter, we welcome you. I will give you my phone number, and you can call me, you can come to my house, and we can have a conversation about what matters to you. We are grassroots. We are doing this from the bottom up, and we are here to engage with everybody. I am ready to take my experience in a courtroom that looks a lot like this, and to take it to the Virginia General Assembly. For the last 25 years, I have been banging my head against laws that sound good, they have pretty words, but they don't mean anything. They're not creating the change that we need to see in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I want to get in there and I want to be a legal wonk. I want to go through these laws word by word, and I want to compare them to other states, and I want to figure out how we can produce results. This isn't a pep rally to me. I'm not doing this because I want to be a politician. I'm doing this because I want to create change. But I'm excited to have you all here, and please check us out online.
I think we can clap. Yeah, you may clap.
Last night I got a call about an asylum case I've been working on, about a transgender woman from Guatemala who, if returned, would face certain death. And I've actually been on notice all afternoon to testify to fight for her life. The promise of our country is not that we just solely survive. The promise of our country is about equal opportunity. The opportunity to work hard, to pursue our dreams, to raise our family with a dignified life. You know, 2 years ago, I wrote an article about why anthropologists make good legislators. It's true, if I happen to post. But, you know, it's because as anthropologists, we understand how underfunded education, expensive healthcare, racial disparities, climate change undercut the promise of the American dream. I have spent the past 2 years fighting for that promise, and I promise you that I will continue to do that in the state Senate. Thank you.
Thank you all for.
On the bottom.
Thank you all for being here. Please don't forget to get out and vote on June 11th. There's also the opportunity to vote at the Henrico County offices this Saturday, which is June 8th. And thanks again for being here.